You are listening to the Fresh Take Network, CIFF interview exclusive.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fresh Take Network. We are very, very privileged today as we roll into CIFF season here to bring you two of the co-directors, producers, writers from Imagining the Indian. First, welcome Yancey Burns. And
Thank
second,
you so much for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor to have you. And then to welcome Ben West.
Yes, I'm happy to join you, and I echo Yancey in thanking you for having us.
And then, of course, my co-host and founder of the Fresh Take Network, myself, Devan Seal. Gentlemen, first off, just, it's being a sports and pop culture podcast. It's always nice when things get to blend together for us. And sports documentaries, I've always said, have been so powerful. You've looked at the history of what the 30 for 30s have done for a lot of subjects. And I look at this one, and this was one that had been out there that really needed to happen. And we've had this ongoing dialect about the Washington football team, but there's so many other things, obviously, with the now Guardians and obviously the Kansas City football team and everything going on there. Obviously there's a reason this is brought to attention, but what made you finally be like, you know what, we need to get this onto film and really get down our point about what is going on here?
I'll jump in quickly. Just a little history about the film. Kevin Blackistone, who is another producer on the film, actually began this in 2014 when it looked like the tide might be shifting with the Washington football team. Everybody on the film team is either from Washington or has lived in Washington for a long time. And he sort of began this when it looked like the second trademark case might take hold and Washington might be forced to change its name. That didn't end up happening, but that was the genesis of this. And then it kind of went on the back burner for a number of years. And we all kind of came together as a team in 2018 and got together. And, the sort of origin story of the film was that Kevin wanted to highlight Suzanne Shown-Harjo as one of the lesser known yet most deserving civil rights icons of the past 5 decades.
Yeah.
And in gelling as a team, we delve so much deeper into not only Suzanne's life and work, but others who are working on this, and the history of the treatment of Native peoples on this continent, and sort of how we got to this place where we are having to deal with appropriation and institutionalized racism. And much of this was filmed post George Floyd, and it was just an atmosphere where we were having to follow all sorts of things in real time, and it was a wild process, but it was we learned so much doing this, and we just like to think we're a small part of moving some of these things forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to your point, Ben, I mean, the summer of 2020 was such a time of change, obviously, and the Washington football team drops the name, and even though the Washington football team's name is the genesis of this project, we have people saying to us, is this still a problem anymore? Do you still need to make this film? And we keep reminding folks, yes, there's still 3 pro teams out there. There's still Kansas City football. There's still Chicago hockey. There's still Atlanta baseball. There's still 2,000 secondary schools across the United States that are still using Native American mascots. And so, yeah, to Ben's point, we're just so happy to highlight the folks who have been part of this fight, who started this fight, who are still fighting this fight, who are still waging it. I mean, Suzanne Shown-Harjo in the film says, she didn't expect for all these mascots to come down in her lifetime, but she's doing, and the movement is doing pretty well. I would like to think that the mascots will come down during her lifetime, because she is one of the greatest underknown civil rights heroes of our time. And I'd love to see that happen for her and for the movement in general.
Yeah, I will say I self-admittedly, unfortunately, didn't know much about her. And when I got to find everything about her, I'm like, this woman is amazing. Seeing her with getting the medal from Obama and everything like that. And I as much as I went into this as a sports fan and knowing that we needed to get rid of these mascots, learning about her was really the privilege of the film for me, of like, and getting to do the research after. And that's, I think, when you have a documentary and you bring someone like that to light, you get to do that research after and get to enlighten yourself more in that individual. And everything I researched on her, I'm like, why have we not talked about her as much? Because she is just unbelievable. Like the word I would use is badass. She's just fantastic.
That's an appropriate word to use. She is that.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, people always ask us, what did you learn during the course of this film? Well, I learned that Suzanne Shown Harjo is about as important as it gets in American history. And so, yeah, that's a pretty great thing. And if our audience can come away learning about that and saying, oh, I've got to know who Suzanne Shown Harjo is, then we've done our job as filmmakers. And just so happy to highlight her because, yeah, like you said, she needs to be highlighted. She needs to be known. She's a badass.
One of the most important things I think for this film is the emotional connection that you guys are able to develop throughout your runtime. In particular, that first half an hour in showing Indigenous imagery and popular culture, which is actually a lot of it created by a European focus or stereotype of what that means. Can you guys talk about how you guys use those emotions to your strength throughout the rest of the film?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, you mentioned the first kind of 20 to 30 minutes of the film, and I was talking to a friend of mine who is also in the film, Dr. Angela Walden, and she was saying, she was complimenting us, which we appreciated, on the fact that we were able to. Angela is a community psychologist who works with native folks, and she was saying, anytime I'm on a panel or talking to a group of people, I have to spend like 40 minutes of the hour just getting them to a baseline knowledge of kind of what happened to Indigenous peoples before I can even start talking about like the work that we are doing now. And she was saying, she was impressed, and I'm not tooting our own horn, but I think it's hard to condense something like the history of some of that stuff into what we, I think, did in 20 to 25 minutes to just try to get the audience, and plenty of people are aware, but to get those who aren't to a baseline sort of perspective and knowledge base of okay, this is what happened to Indian people, and then we can get into the last century and what's happening now. I think I may have strayed completely from your question, and I apologize if I did so.
Yeah, you stayed right on point.
Yeah. Yancey, jump in. Yeah.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, how do you explain how we start as a culture using these words, these images, these gestures for sports teams, for branding, without explaining how we dehumanized a group of people? I mean, you have to explain that baseline before you can get to, okay, why do we view this as an acceptable practice, and why should we not view this as an acceptable practice? So yeah, that laying that baseline of knowledge is just imperative to be able to tell the story of mascotting and using Native people as a branding and mascotting tool.
I think too, in that first half an hour, such an important thing too is when you guided through animation and film, the stereotypical side of things, whether it be Pocahontas or be Tiger Lily in some of those Disney movies. I mean, even unfortunately for Asian people, you look at the terrible thing from Mickey Rooney and Breakfast and Tiffany's, right? In these terrible stereotypical visions of people that goes back into film. And I think that realized into the sporting side to make it okay for all these years. I mean, talking about a movie like Pocahontas that is terrible in the visual way you look at it now, and that was just 1995. It wasn't that long ago that we were going that way. And with some of these mascots, I mean, Washington just changed 2 years ago, and I look at how we took so long to progress.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it took a long time, and you know, we want not to belabor the point, but you know, there was so much going on while we were making the film, but we cannot and must not forget that there are those who have been fighting this battle for decades
Absolutely.
and decades. And you know, we mentioned Suzanne Harjo, but there are many others in the film
Yep.
who have been fighting for native rights, not only in mascotting arena, but land rights, water rights, repatriation. You know, Kevin Gover's in the film. Full disclosure, Rick West, my father, is in the film. These are people who have dedicated their lives and careers to the good of Indian country. And you know, while it's exciting and things moved very fast over the past few years, this is by no means a new phenomenon. This has been underway for decades and decades, and we owe it to those elders of ours who made it possible for you know, a younger and I think more tolerant and more forward-thinking generation to kind of act upon the groundwork that they laid for things to happen so swiftly recently.
Yeah, and Rick West, who has become a hero of mine, as is his son Ben West. but Rick is fond of saying, you know, all of these deals from the past, you see them surface in the modern era with folks in the modern era, and I see that when we interview someone like Galen Krauser, who is the head of the Kansas City Indian Center, and she talks about, you know, her fight in Kansas City with the Kansas City football team. And during our interview, she was brought to tears about it. I mean, talking about how she can't go to a grocery store in her own city without seeing the objectification of her people in the grocery store, that they'll sell tomahawk chopped steaks. And she says, you know, she sees this and she sees the effect it has on her kids, and she sees the effect it has on the kids in her community. And to see that just makes it so real. And it makes you wonder why folks don't understand that it's a real and tangible effect on people. I mean, it seems like such a deplorable practice, and to think that anyone could ever defend it is mind-blowing.
Yeah. And you know, I'll jump in really quickly and actually counter ask a question to the two of you, Joshua and Devan. You know, one of the things, we deal with some serious stuff in this movie, obviously, generational trauma, genocide, or attempted genocide. We're still here, but you know, we hope that one of the things, and it was our intention, was not to make this a tragedy. As I said, we're still here. We're thoughtful. We're funny. As Kevin Gover says, we're, you know, we do dumb things. We, you know, we're human. We're human just like everybody else. And I hope that in watching the film, you know, the two of you got a sense of Native people's sense of humor, and you know, the fact that we're multifaceted, just like anybody else, and we wanted to make sure that this didn't come across as a kind of whoa, our Native people, you've mistreated us, shame on you. You know, we wanted to end this on a positive note, because there is a lot of positivity underway right now as we seek to make changes.
I think that ties in so well at the end of your movie with the activist who her vision was transformed basically by meeting people.
Yeah.
And where we live, specifically in Alberta, we're bordered on many sides by different Indigenous nations, and we run into those people tangentially through sports and through people that we know, and seeing them co-opt some of those logos or images for their own personal use. I mean, we can make a lot of parallels to Black people recapturing the N-word or things of that nature. But it's funny how we have sports teams that we don't have people wear afros in these stadiums. We don't have people play jazz music, for example. It's kind of a double standard. And so one of the questions I had for you guys was, one of the most striking images of the movie were playing people's reactions to the protests and some of the hateful things that they were saying. How would you respond to people who would say that a team named like the Braves or the Blackhawks honor Indigenous people, much like Vikings or Crusaders would?
My first reaction would be, if we tell you you're not honoring us, you're not honoring us. All right, it's not your decision to make. You don't tell us that you're honoring us when we don't feel like we're being honored, because that defies the entire definition of honor and the logic in honoring somebody or something. So it's nonsensical to me. It's hard for me even to wrap my mind around. And I'll give you an example that's actually not in the movie, but the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, they got rid of Chief Wahoo years and years ago, but there's remains to this day an organization on campus, and there are many of these. This is just an example, called the Honor the Chief Society, where they are holding on to this tradition, and their reason for doing so is because they maintain that they were honoring the native people of that region, and they insist that this is the case even after the institution that they attended or are affiliated with in whatever way, have been fans of for whatever reason, have themselves made the decision that, nope, that's not the case. And we're uncomfortable with it and we're gonna stop. Yet I think people's own personal connection, whatever it is something they're unwilling to part with. And I don't get it, to be honest. So, that's as much as an answer as I can give to that question, because it does not make much sense to me.
I'll add to that really quick, Yancey. Like, I kind of look at the example as, I'm a Las Vegas Raider fan. If for some reason something came out and the Pirate Nation was offended for some reason by the Raider logo, we're getting rid of all pirate things, I would, I am been connected. I've been a Raider fan for 20 plus years. But if I'm knowing that that is going to hurt somebody and that is affecting someone, and it's the name has to go, it's fine. We still have our players. We still have our history. It's all there. But if this name is affecting someone, it has to go. And you could see how much just losing a name with some of the people you guys talked about, how much it just mentally destroyed them. And at the end of the day, that team is still staying the same. It's just the name. As much as you maybe love that name and it's been part of your roots and childhood and there's nostalgia for it, I get it. At the end of the day, it's affecting people, many, many people. And like you talked about with the tomahawk steak thing and whatnot, it's diminishing people and giving them mental stress just for a sports team. I think that's the one thing you can do, is you can let go of that sports team if it's going to give people a lot more ease in their life to not be diminishing them.
So I'd dive into why we have an empathy problem in our society, but I don't think we could examine it in the time we have right now.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Ben. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say to that point, in the one of the PSAs that is in the film and ran on television, the statement is, take the name away and it's still Washington football, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's the same team, same players. Your favorite players are still your favorite players. The players you wish got traded, still the players you wish got traded. Like it's the same everything. Just a different logo on the helmet maybe, and a different name. And I would also say, I mean, the example of Pirates and Vikings and those do come up oftentimes. And I think there's a distinction to be made there. I'll say this: anybody could have been a pirate, right? A pirate is not an ethnic group. If you somehow manage to make your way onto a ship and then make your way onto another ship and come away with some booty, then you're a pirate. When you're putting Native people on helmets and jerseys, and that's a little bit different to me, because it's a group of people who are defined by who they are, not what they do. I think it's important to, you'll see in the film that there are various signs that kind of that address that. These are people who are who they are, and there was no choice involved. That's simply who Native people are. We are Native people, and that's why it's even more troublesome when you co-opt something like that, like somebody's identity, like literally their identity as a human being. That it's just so it's even more problematic than some of the other examples that are often given.
Yeah, it's their professions, not people. But back to what you were saying about the PSA, Ben. I mean, yeah, without the name, it's still Washington Football, and that was demonstrated last week. The team is reporting they had their best week of merchandise sales that they've had in over a decade. It's still the team without the name. It's still Washington Football. So yeah, and this thought that mascots are honorifics is just ridiculous in the first place. I mean, they're not. The purpose of a mascot is to coalesce a community around a team. It's not to honor people. I mean, Phil Deloria says it best. The scholar Phil Deloria says, is there any sense that the Green Bay Packers are honoring meat packers in Wisconsin? Is there any sense that that's what the purpose of the Packers is? No, of course not. It's just a way to coalesce the community around the football team. And so just the thought that it would be an honorific in the first place is just ridiculous.
And I also love Galen's line about the Packers as well. Like, would people walk around with cheese on their heads if they weren't Packers fans?
Yeah.
No. But is cheese on your head, which is kind of funny to me, the same as wearing a headdress into a stadium? Absolutely not. Two completely different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Dev?
So we don't have the same professional sports teams. Well, we have one up in Edmonton, which is about 3 hours north of
the Eskimos.
The Eskimos. They just recently changed to the Elks.
Yeah, so I do not mean to interrupt at all, Devin. My cousin Karen, who I'm hoping will be able to make it down to Calgary, lives in Edmonton with her family. And when we began making the film, they were the Eskimos, and as you say, they no longer are.
So I have a question. I'll get to it in just 1 second. It's in Canada, we had a bit of a reckoning last summer with residential schools and the treatment of Indigenous children for the last about 120 years, and to the point where we're changing neighborhood names, school names, and we're experiencing almost this exact same level of pushback, just on the sports front per se. Even the neighborhood adjacent to me is named after a bishop who advocated for the genocide of Indigenous culture and the Indigenous race. My question to you guys is, when you started this project, I guess around 2014 or around there, did your vision, has it changed, or how has it changed over the process of making this film?
Well, I'll start off. So my grandfather was taken at 5 years old and taken to a boarding school here in Oklahoma. Cut his hair, smacked him on the wrist whenever he tried to speak his own language. Those sorts of things, and believe me, I know that the same thing happened in Canada to First Nations people. And so first off, if there is something named after a bishop who advocated for that sort of thing, I absolutely think that name should change. Just my personal opinion. So yes, but let me just get that out there. But I think the question, Devin, was kind of how our own views on things and have shifted over the course of making the film. Is that right? Yeah. I came into this with some strong views, and that as a result of having grown up around people like my father and my uncle and my auntie Suzanne Harjo, many others. I did not realize, I had not researched fully the kind of facts here, and you know, I'd read about them, but actually going and reading one of Stephanie Freiberg's research papers gives you a whole nother perspective, solidifies exactly how scientific this is. We are dealing with facts here about the way that mascots, and in a broader sense, representations in film and television, pop culture, whatever it may be, have without a doubt been proven to have detrimental effects on Native people's sense of self, particularly Native youth, and that there's a direct correlation between these things and things like depression, anxiety, suicidal ideology, substance abuse, and that cannot be denied. And so this is a long-winded way of getting to say that, you know, I knew how I felt going into making the film, and all that's happened in making the film is like, I understand the evidence that justifies me feeling the way that I have. And so if anything, I've become more opinionated, radical. I don't know.
Doubling down.
I guess. Hey, you know, let's Yancey answer this question.
Yeah.
Too, because
Yeah, and I think that much the same, but obviously coming from a different perspective. You know, I'm a non-native person. I grew up in a red state on the East Coast of the United States that doesn't have any indigenous, or, you know, has an indigenous population, but doesn't have any, you know, established, sovereign nation within it. And so, you know, to come from the perspective of the folks around me who you know, so many would say, oh, this is a matter of opinion. You know, this is you're just offended. You're to use the parlance of our time, you're just too woke. You're too woke if you think this is an issue. And then to read Dr. Freiberg's research, where it becomes, tangible, factual evidence that this is having an effect on Native people in general, particularly Native youth, that not only does it have an effect, these mascots have a psychological and a physical effect on the health of Native people and Native youth, but it's having an effect on people of color in general, because it's expanding beyond to allow for mistreatment and just for an identify, you know, attacking folks' sense of identity. And so to see that and to better understand that, no, this isn't just, oh, you know, I think it's offensive, you don't think it's offensive, to know this is offensive because factually this is offensive because it is hurting people. There is no reason that a sports team should have carte blanche to not that important. You know, people are more important than your allegiance to your sports team name. And as far as just the longevity goes, we just got off a press conference with the United Nations Association Film Festival, and they were saying that in 1998 on Native American mascots, because they thought that it was going to be a thing of the past, as soon as we got into the 21st century, they thought, oh, well, this is, you know, we're going to get rid of these names. You know, the trademark cases gave people a little bit of hope, you know, and we're being programmed as part of their festival this year, 23, 24 years later, and it's still obviously an issue because, again, teams, people.
To take that, we're starting to see in popular culture, specifically this year, maybe last year, films and entertainment products specifically made by and for Indigenous, specific, then a show like Reservation Dogs, which you guys touch on. How much more can we do as a society, or how much more do you guys want to see in terms of representation in pop culture? Like what's the perfect dream for you guys?
Well, first of all, shame on you, Peacock, for canceling Rutherford Falls. They will find a new home. But Yeah, I mean, listen, and again, yeah, we need to address these things, and we do in the film. And you know, this is also a really exciting time to be a Native person, if it's in Hollywood or you know, we're being recognized more than we have in the past, and we're being. I mean, when we get to entertainment specifically, one of the most important things, and one of the things that we hit on several times in the documentary, is that Native people need to be allowed to tell their own stories, and that there's as I think we all know, a history of Native people's truths being appropriated by non-Native people. I mean, you know, there were, you know, Chris Rock made the joke. I can't remember in which special it was in, but you know, the Puerto Rican Day, the Puerto Ricans playing Indians in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, which, you know, is funny, but so true also. And you know, it's I use that example lightheartedly, but you know, the and I think we're getting further away from that, and I think more people are recognizing that, you know, a show about Native Americans should have a bunch of Native Americans in the writing room, right? Like that just makes sense. And that's happening, and that's one of the positive things that is happening. And you know, we hope that the documentary will help people recognize that that's the sort of thing that should be happening, and that's one of the positive outcomes that we hope the doc will have.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stephanie Freiberg, I go back to Dr. Freiberg all the time because I'm such a fan of her work and what she does. But she says, you know, if you think a group doesn't exist, and before this level of representation, which we're finally starting to see, a good amount of people didn't know that Native people existed in the modern era, which is beyond insane, but we won't go into that. But if you think a group of people doesn't exist, you know, do you have to worry about hurting them? And that's the problem. And so that's why, yeah, to see, you know, see Amber Mid Thunder and Prey, and to see Reservation Dogs, see Dark Winds. You know, we were lucky enough to have Kiowa Gordon on one of our panels who's in Dark Winds, and to see that reaching, you know, pop culture, to see it reaching the mainstream pop culture, it pushes back against that, people believing that these people don't exist, and that, you know, that's what needs to happen, because then you can't harm the people that do exist. And so it's so wonderful to see this. And yeah.
In the epilogue you guys have, you talked about the Kansas City football team and how the headdress thing had been kind of pulled away. But then I turned into Thursday Night Football this week on Amazon for the first broadcast, and you have end racism in the end zone, and you have the tomahawk chop going. I'm a sports broadcaster. I've been in some of these gyms where this has happened many times. I've never been a fan of it, much like I'm not a fan of the wave. This is obviously a bigger situation to worry about, but the irony of the end racism thing with the chop going on there. And obviously that was before, you know, this is after your documentary came out, so you can't have the irony of this shot. And I guess I say all this with the NFL did this stuff after George Floyd with the idea to pursue things. Have you guys had conversations with, you know, the NFL about Kansas City, or the NHL about the Blackhawks, or with MLB about the Atlanta baseball team?
We approached all of the aforementioned organizations and requested interviews. Surprise, surprise, none of them wanted to talk to us. But you know, I'll take. We have examples of all of these from people we interviewed for the film. You know, when it comes to the Blackhawks, Anthony Temez Pochel, Angela Walden are both in Chicago. Derek Jennings is Sac and Fox, and that's where the hockey team went and found the Blackhawk name. they all have strong feelings about it, and they are the ones. I mean, we will help them by getting the word out and letting their voices be heard. It's people like that who are on the ground in Chicago doing the work. It's people like Rhonda Lavaldo and Galen Krauser, and those that they organize in Kansas City who are on the ground doing the work. In Atlanta, there are people, particularly Aaron Payment, when he was at NCAI, he engaged both MLB and the team, the front office of the team, did not get much of anywhere. At Atlanta, I think could use a little more of that energy that people like Galen and Rhonda bring in Kansas City. That's not to discount anybody in Atlanta who is out trying to get stuff done. But yeah, I mean, you know, those are the folks.
And I'll plug that we're trying to bring some of that energy to Atlanta. We're going to be on September 23rd, so next weekend, we're going to be at the Morehouse College Human Rights Film Festival, because we want to, you know, what is the diet. You know, we love the fact that Ryan Helsley, the pitcher for the Cardinals, came out and said, you know, this offends me when I'm on the mound and we're playing the Atlanta baseball team and I see the crowd doing the chop. This offends me and this hurts me, and this is not a practice that should be allowed by fans while I'm completing my profession. You know what I mean? He's a Cherokee pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, and he's come out and said it. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to being in Atlanta next weekend to talk to folks, to see, you know, what's going on in Atlanta to change this, because yeah, there are pockets of people everywhere. Wherever there's a mascot, there are parts of people. I learned that a couple of weeks ago. I was in West Virginia for the West Virginia International Film Festival, and I talked to some folks who are fighting a high school team in rural West Virginia. And you know, it's a tough slog in rural West Virginia to fight a high school team, but the high school team the name is still the R word, so it's still the most egregious. And so, you know, it is heartening, to say the least, to know that everywhere there's one of these mascots, there is a group of folks who are fighting this fight. And for the most part, there's a group of folks who have been fighting this fight for a very long time. And so if we can highlight and illuminate them, that's the best thing we can do.
On the subject again of the chop, what has been the feedback from you from those that would fight against it, of the reason why it needs to stay? Because I can't think of any logistical reason why to keep it, but what is the reason and the pushback you've gotten from the most prominent we've seen, I guess, would be Kansas City, Atlanta, and to a degree Florida State, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the to a degree is the problem. So, yeah. And this is just from my own observation, but I mean, yes, Florida State has a relationship with Seminole Nation, and because of that relationship, you know, they're allowed to put a white kid in red face every Saturday to go out as Chief Osceola, and if it's kind of, and there's a thought that if it's all right for Florida State to do it, then who's to say that Kansas City and Atlanta can't do it? And I'll let Ben to speak to that further.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kevin Gover has a line in the movie, right? So, and that line is quite simple and to the point. Indians do not do the tomahawk chop. So this falls into the same barrel of bullshit that all the rest of it does. It's no different than strapping on a neon, feather headdress and walking into the stadium, or chanting that ridiculous non-song that incites the tomahawk chop, which is meant to sound like a powwow drum, but is completely made up. So it's just like if you're appropriating somebody's culture, which you should not be doing in the first point, then like it's all, again, it's all the same thing. And it just so happens the tomahawk chop, like Indians, I mean, I'm Cheyenne. We wear war bonnets. We're Plains Indians. So, I can see why you might strap on that neon feather headdress, because it looks like something you've seen before, whether a fake one on television, or maybe you know somebody who had a real one. So when you get to the tomahawk chop, it's even less relevant than something like that, because it's completely invented. It has nothing to do with anything. I don't know who it was who first, did it, but there's even less basis in reality when it comes to the tomahawk chop than with some of the other things, and yet it's attributed to Native people somehow. So they made something up and told us that we did it, basically.
Hashtag barrel of bullshit. Hashtag imagining the Indian. Hashtag the fight continues.
As we wrap up here, one of the main things that I thought was important too was talking about some of those high school mascot names, because you grow up with this, right? And if you can avoid the growing up with it, I think that's half the battle. I think you guys were orchestrating that in the documentary of fighting this halfway, right? And you showed that fantastic story of that one student that fought to change the R word for a team name. I went to a high school that the name was Chiefs. So we had the whole cliche Indigenous mascot and all that bullshit. And even then, as 18 years old, I'm like, this doesn't seem right. But it was 2003 at that point. So you're like, I guess this is what we're doing. And we had 2 Native players on our team, and we're just kind of like, I'm not comfortable with this, but I guess I have to do this if I want to play for the team. So I thought that was so important for you guys to hit that point, because you're growing up with having this notion, even at a young age, these mascots are okay because this is your high school mascot or your junior high mascot.
Yeah, I think it's, listen, we obviously need to address this at the top tier of things, which is highly recognizable professional franchises. There's been a great deal of change at the university level, but I think most importantly is to get it done when kids are in their formative years, and this kind of thing gets ingrained into children's heads. And it's, by the way, not only non-native kids. There are reservation schools who use the nickname, the R word, and are proud of it. And that becomes a murky issue, because is this something that you get to own? Much like some African Americans use the N word, because they have taken it back. My response to that would be that is precisely why it is essential, not only for Native kids, for non-Native kids, to get to the children as early as we possibly can. And part of that, I think, is let's take mascots and caricatures, like let's take that out. Let's relieve children of that problem, and then we can start concentrating on educating them about accurate history, which is what they should be learning, and including Native people in that, in the narrative, literally in the textbook that everybody gets, and have it be truthful, and avoid the distraction of the dancing mascot on the field at a high school game, the stereotypical stoic Indian head on the football helmet. That's just a distraction that gets in the way of us actually helping all of our children learn about history across the board, Native, non-Native. Let's give them a good jumping off point to learn real things about real people, in this case Native Americans, but it applies to any group of people.
Yeah. And let's also embrace when the kids are leading these movements. I mean, that's what's so wonderful. I mean, we were just at the Sioux Film Festival in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and we were hosted by Aaron Payment. And Aaron worked with NCAI for many years and went across the country to board meetings. And he says himself, when you go into these school boards, that the one argument that always works is when it's one of the kids shaming the adults, saying, this is wrong, this practice should stop. And so I'm just so proud, awareness is an everyday job. And it sure seems like the kids are better at that everyday job than previous generations have been. And so I'm so proud that there are more and more kids who are rising up and saying, you know, this is wrong. We're not going to have this. And that's what really works. And so you know, I hope that in all those 2,000 schools across America, there's a group of kids or a kid who's going to say, nope, this ain't right, and is going to spend their time at that secondary school taking it down, because it's an unbeatable proven method that can win this fight. And so yeah, props to the kids.
And my last question for you guys is, since it came out, what has been the feedback to the results for those that have seen the film? And a second part of that too, was there something that you had transpired that you wish that you had a chance to include, but it is what it is?
I mean, the feedback generally has been very positive. And you know, the thing I think we're proudest about is that, and that was one of our primary goals going into this, was to educate. I think we use that in some of our press materials, and that sounds kind of haughty, but pretentious. But I'm using the wrong words myself now. But you know, we've had people come out of the film and say, "Man, I didn't realize that."
Yeah.
Like, you know, I learned something, and that's gonna, like, I need to think about this. Like, you know, I didn't know that, and like, that's probably going to affect the way I think about things moving forward. And that's what we wanted to do. And I think, at least to some degree, we've succeeded in initiating a dialogue between people when they, you know, I'm sure Yancey has done the same. We've done it together, kind of lingering outside a theater after a screening and kind of listening to what people are talking about in their group, you know, a few feet away, and people are discussing this. And I think that's like, that makes me really proud of what we've done, that we're helping, you know, facilitate discussion, which will lead to change, I think.
Yeah, and so I'll start with personally. Yeah, personally, that's it. Ben talks to it. I mean, every person who comes up to us after a screening and says, I did not understand this issue, I had no understanding of really any of the parts. So not the history, not the fight, not where we're at now, no understanding. And to have people say, yeah, I came away with a greater understanding, and this is an issue that I care about now because I finally understand it, that's wonderful. I'll put on my hype beast hat though and say the response we've gotten has been very positive. And first I'll say we're so honored to be in the Calgary International Film Festival. I mean, that's such a huge deal for us, and we're so excited about that. You know, we were so excited. We won Best Documentary at Boston International. We've also gotten into Imaginative coming up for us. We're one of the finalists for the Library of Congress Ken Burns Prize for Documentary Film, which is the largest prize in documentary film. So yeah, we're so excited about the response the film is receiving critically, and just again, just back to that personal level, just back to every person that walks up to us and says, yeah, this is something I needed to know, and I can't believe I didn't know this before. That's wonderful. And you know, it's all thanks to, you know, this film came out of Indian country. This film is made possible by our producers, the Yochidi Hiwantun Nation, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. It's made possible by all the folks who are our interviewees. You know, we have an incredible cast of characters who sat down and talked about this for us, and we're so proud of that. And we were, you know, not only that, you know, Tulalip invited us to do, you know, footed the bill for us to do interviews at their reservation. You know what I mean? Like Tougaloo University let us, you know, we're so appreciative of all the help that we got. You know, I say it all the time, and I'm gonna say it one more time. Teamwork makes the dream work. I know it's cliche, but nothing happens without it, and especially in film, because it takes so many hands and hearts and minds. And we're just so appreciative of all those hands and hearts and minds that made this film possible.
And you know, if not one of us film team members has been slapped by Will Smith yet, then we're doing all right.
Goals.
Way to end the interview. We want to thank CIFF on behalf of for the media accreditation. Josh and I might be a little biased after talking to you guys. Really believe in what you guys have accomplished, and we really want to encourage people who are listening to this podcast to give the film a shot. You can see it September 27th, 7:30 p.m. at Eau Claire Theater 1, or October 1st, 4:30 p.m. Eau Claire Theater 3. Josh, any last words?
No, gentlemen, thanks so much. The great thing about CIFF this year is there's so many great sports documentaries in a variety of ways, talking about the Vancouver Grizzlies and them leaving, talking about the Summit Series in Canada and how much important that was. And I think having something like this was also important. You're kind of getting the full array of a championship that meant a lot to a country, a team leaving and how much that meant to a country, but then this that's been going on for a while, and mascot names and representation, how it does matter and how it needs to change to move forward, and how a mascot name cannot just be a name, that it can affect so many people.
Right on. Well, thank you both so much for so much both for having us. Ben and I are both going to be on hand for the screenings. We hope we get to see you in person, and we hope we get to see a lot of folks who listen to this come on out and talk to us. We'd love to speak to you.
Do you guys have anything to plug before we get out of here?
Just this movie again, and your best.
Yeah, we're excited. Yeah. We're on the festival circuit. Yeah, we're excited to be at Calgary upcoming. Like I said, we're at Morehouse this coming weekend. We'll be at Imaginative in October. We'll be at a variety of places. So yeah, check us out online. Follow our socials.
Right.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we'd love to have you follow us on social, and you can check out the website at imaginingtheindianfilm.org. Yep. We keep some updated news scrolling on there, and we try to engage with people as much as we possibly can, and we love doing it.
For sure.
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, holler at us on the tweets, the Instagrams, the Facebooks. Holler at us all over. Yep.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. It was an absolute privilege. Until next time, everyone, cheers and enjoy the day, people.
You're listening to the Fresh Take Network, CIFF interview exclusive.